Hello, welcome to the October 6, 2023 Club Cubase live stream. My name is Greg Undo and I'm the host of the live stream. If you have not attended a live stream before, how it works is you can ask questions in the live chat field or simply submit questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. When asking questions, if you could indicate which version of Cubase or what version of another Steinberg program that you are running. So if it is version 11, 12, which level of Cubase, if it's Cubase LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro, and which platform, whether you're running on Mac or Windows, that information would be helpful. Realize that when asking questions, especially in the live chat, that at times I may get 20 to 30 minutes behind the live chat. So if you ask a question and don't see an immediate response, if we could refrain from asking the same question repeatedly, that would be appreciated. It just makes it easier for us to get a number of, just a second. It makes it easier for us to actually go through more questions. So if you don't see an immediate response to your question, if we could refrain from asking questions repeatedly, that would be great. Also, we should have an index of all the topics covered pinned to the comments field. It may be later tonight than usual. My brother is visiting from out of town, so I'm going to go get dinner with him tonight. So it may be tomorrow morning by the time the index is posted, so just a heads up with that. But if you wanted to search for topics that have been covered in previous live streams, I think we have over 28,000, I think 28,300 some topics, and you can go to cubaseindex.com and search there for topics. And we want to thank Jan from Stockholm for creating that wonderful website. Also, we want to give a special thanks to Jazz Dude and Agent K, who serve as moderators. They're not Steinberg employees. They really just do it to make it a better community. And we'll give a special kudos to Jazz Dude for his work with the Cubase Nation Discord. It's a wonderful resource of information and tutorials for the Steinberg community. Once again, my name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America. I primarily focus on Steinberg products, and we're the U.S. distributor, and I'm presenting or hosting from outside of Washington, D.C. area, United States, from Alexandria, Virginia. So if you're watching this live, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. So with that, we will go ahead and begin. All right, so the first question from Zephaniah, this is from Detroit. Hi, Greg. In the mastering project, when I import a track, it's not centered in stereo. How can I fix that? I'm using Artist 10 on PC. So I'll go ahead and we'll just do a new project. I'm going to choose from the template. I assume it's the mastering template. So we'll come over here, we'll create. And at this point, I'm going to just come over. So we have our template with two different plugins. So we have our VST Dynamics as well as our stereo enhancer. So I will now go ahead and import an audio file. And well, first, if we want to test to make sure that it's in stereo, I will come over to this track, and as an insert, I'm going to put just a tool. So we'll see a test tone generator. I'm going to make sure that the volume that's being transmitted is down a little bit, so no one needs to hear test tone super loud. All right, so when we look at this on our stereo track, we could see kind of throughout the metering source that we're going to have the same dBs that were at -12, -12, -12. So I don't see any disparity between the tracks on that particular template. If we go to add, and I'll import an audio file to this particular track. So we'll say import audio file, and I'll just put one in here. So we look at my stereo output here. We'll go to, let's say, our analyzer to supervision. You see that the stereo is pretty consistent. So whether you're running test tone or the file, it seems, so make sure that, you know, maybe on your track that you don't have like it panned. So if I have it kind of panned like this, you may notice that that could cause disparity in this stereo source. But it looks like everything is kind of working as expected here, Zephaniah. So let me know if I'm doing something differently. All right, wonderful to see the Heartbreak Time Machine. We have Stefan checking in from Sweden, and we have Thomas from Norway. Thanks for joining us today. All right, Uno Memento, just a loyal attendee from Finland. Great to see you on. Thanks for being here this evening. All right, in the Heartbreak Time Machine, checking in from Sacramento. We have Val Yu from Vienna, Austria. Thanks for joining us. All right, Value is sending bestest greets to everyone around the world. All right, we see Jan from Cubase Index saying hello to everyone from Stockholm. All right, so we see I have an audio of a bass line I'd like to double with a synth. Is there a way to extract the melody line to MIDI to save time? Cubase Pro 12 Windows 11. This is from Value. So let me just go to project where we have kind of a bass line. Okay, so I'm going to add an instrument track with a bass part. So I'll just add a Hallian Sonic. And let's say I want to do maybe synth bass. So we'll come over here. Okay, so let's say we want to maybe take this and let's see if we can maybe. All right, so let's say we want to take this here and let's use that as our bass sound. Okay, so I'm going to take my bass part here. So let's say I just want to take, I'll just render all these together. We have multiple takes. So I'm going to duplicate my track version. And then quickly I'm going to my duplicate version here. Just can get audio bounce selection, so we have one particular event. All right, so now when we double click on our bass part, we will come over to and go to Vary Audio for our bass. We'll choose to edit the Vary Audio. So this is basically figuring out what the notes are. And let's say at this point I want to just choose Extract MIDI. And then we want to put it on to the first selected track. So now we have our bass part here, and we extracted that to the track, and I left that track selected. So as we play, and let me just knock this up an octave here real quick. All right, so I will come over to my mix console. sound it's not changing so much, but that's kind of the process to do that, and you could tweak the MIDI if needed to match. But again, just within the VariAudio editor, as soon as we go to the VariAudio, at this point, you'll see under choose function, and then you'll see the extract MIDI right there. All right. Okay, so we have Cubase user saying hi to everyone, and saying happy Friday. Heartbreak Time Machine says new Arturia Keylab 88. Now when I play MIDI, it renders 16th note ahead. Is there a pre-delay setting somewhere? So if you're on Windows, you could come over here. Let's say we go to Studio Setup, and then you'll see MIDI port setup. And this is a Windows only thing, so I can't really show it exactly. But here you may see some options of ignore port filter. You'll see some additional options for that. So it could be just, not using the Windows timestamps, and you may see other MIDI drivers that are listed, but you'll see some different options here for, use Windows MME. I think I'm kind of blanking on what it was, but you'll see additional options here. So again, Studio to Studio Setup, and try toggling some of those settings, and that will probably fix it for you. All right, wonderful to have Benny on from Sweden. All right, so we have Vorname from Hungary. Thanks for joining us today, being on the live stream. All right, we see Jan from Cubase Indexed giving Jazz Dude just kudos for the Cubase Nation Discord. All right, so we have Martin checking in from Germany using Cubase Pro 12 on Windows. All right, we have a question from Soren from Sweden. If I want to tune a kick drum to the key of the song, a Google search tells me to look at the fundamental in EQ and just pitch the kick. That is not easy for me. Can you show that? So let's take just a quick, we could use VariAudio for this. And there's a couple tricks you could do. So one is, let's say I'm just going to drag this sample out. Just put onto a different track here. All right, so I'm just going to hold down Alt Option. So now we have this, and I'm going to just treat this again. I'll just say I'm going to make it into its own file just for expediency's sake. So we'll just say bounce selection. Okay, so when we look at this, one of the things you could do is just say, okay, we're going to look at this, and I think you could go to audio. There's a couple ways of approaching this, to statistics, and then once you come here, let me see if it indicates pitch, or it might be in Wavelab, or does that. Okay, so I think it's in the Wavelab analysis I was thinking of. But what you can do is just come here. Let's go to your sample editor and go to VariAudio. And as you kind of scroll down here, so let's say we can see that this will indicate that this pitch will be at the particular, and we could do this just on the, if you want to just come over here, go to Edit VariAudio, and we'll just come over here. All right, so say as we play it here, just just try with another drum source here. And let me just see if I take this and maybe normalize it, see if we get a little more gain out of it. So come over here to processes and so it doesn't look like it's all right. So let's say if we pitch shift this up 1 octave, it's very audio is usually kind of determined for it's kind of set up for vocals. So I'm going to just go to processes and let's see if we pitch shift this up. Okay, so just mute that. All right, so if we take it up an octave and let's do our very audio here. Just going to try it with a different project out of curiosity. But generally, you could come over here. Now, if you have Wavelab, Soren, one of the things you could do also is, let's say if we have just that little section, and we go to audio and edit in Wavelab, then you could also just come over, let's do our analysis. We'll just do a global analysis of the file. And here you could see, so we'll say analyze. It's not liking that particular kick drum. All right, so let me just going to try a different kick. Let's see, I think I've done this before. Let me just try a different project, see if it's going to behave better. Try this one. It says live drums. Okay, so I'll just take this. I'm just going to try with a snare, see if that. So you can kind of determine the pitch from there, but sometimes also just kind of audibly listening to it as well. You know, so if you load up just, let's say if we want to find just a kick sample here, so say as we're playing this. And you could also, I guess one trick you could do also, let's take this approach. Let's go to inserts. And let's go to under spectral domain, and then we can say spectral keyboard. And let's say just as you look at this spectrum curve here, so let's say we look at the spectrum bar. So probably the center is going to be here, and as you move this over, you could see kind of the frequency, and then you could just determine the pitch from that particular frequency as well. So give those suggestions a try, but you could also check out. You know, most of the times I've had it work a number of projects where it could determine the pitch of the kick, but you know the very audio sometimes maybe, you know, the algorithm's already designed for voice. So, but maybe use the supervision, and that could be another method to do it. Okay, so we see Nidichu Peter says I see I want to understand how to use it better. Let me see if I missed maybe the first part of the question. So if you have like particular questions, we'd be happy to you know, help you with that, but just let us know if let us know if you're, you know, if you have a particular question. All right, so we see from Kick Studios, why is the Cubase online shop offline? I need to buy Cubase. And so the online shop, we were using a third-party company that did all the taxes and all the, you know, deployment and collection and all of that information. So we did that with a company called AskNet, and we've had a relationship with them for, you know, 10, 15 years. And they have gone into insolvency, so we're currently transitioning to a new provider. You know, there are dealers that sell Cubase, so you know, if you're in the United States, you can buy it from Sweetwater if you want to buy it online, or buy it from any dealer as well. All right, so we see question: are you guys giving some discount on Cubase this year? I wish the Melodyne and Cubase offer again happens. So, you know, generally, you know, usually when a new version is coming out, you know, it's often not discounted initially. So there may be promotions throughout the year, but we'll have to wait and see. But generally, the, you know, promotions aren't announced in advance. All right. We have a question from Cubase user. I tested analog emulation plugins, and I found that the 8-18 RMS is equal to -16 in the mixer. Is there a way we can see the RMS and peaks in the mixer? Is there a way we can see RMS and peaks in the mixer future requests. So, what I would do is, instead of figuring out from the mixer, if you want to see that, maybe, so we could see kind of our peak meters, and then we could also just get a sense of what, the peak is directly here. But, check out utilizing some of the plugins as well. So if you wanted to check out like, your different signal levels here, you could see a lot of different information for your peak and RMS right there. So. All right, so we see Tepkizik music. Hi, Greg. How do I create a mono instrument? And secondly, how do I render and place that instrument as a mono file? So it's, whatever the instrument is designed to output to is what Cubase will recognize. So the vast majority of instruments are set up to actually work in, to work in stereo. So if your instrument has mono outputs, Cubase will support it. But if you wanted to export, let's say if I had a virtual instrument track here, I think we could load up maybe some keys here. So let's say, just look. All right, so let's say we want to take this synth part here that's in. All right, so if I wanted to take these files here and create a mono file, all you'd have to do is come to export, and let's go to export audio mixdown. We could say we want to take the melody, and so we're just going to search because we have so many tracks here. All right, so we want to take the keyboard melody, and at that point we want to choose to do a mono down mix, and we'll create a new audio track. So we'll just say export audio, and I did it between the left and right locators there. So we go to the bottom, we now have a mono file. That's just that synth. So if you wanted to, again, come over to export audio mixdown, you could select the instrument and choose mono down mix right there, and choose to, after export, choose create audio file. Then you could just quickly have, and you could do that for multiple tracks at once. All right, wonderful to see Gerald Ely. All right, wonderful as well to see Razel from Denmark. Thanks for joining us today. Okay, so we have a question from Ralph Nelson Tucker. It says, greetings from UK. Forgive me, but why is there a Studio EQ plugin supplied when there's already an EQ facility in the channel settings? So if we go to our EQ here, so let's say we open up our channel settings, every channel in Cubase, and it was really the first DAW to do this, has a channel EQ. But let's say we wanted to do a particular process where we say, okay, I want it on this to add a delay, and I wanted that delay to go into channel EQ so that I could take all of the effects and run the chain effect. So once we come over here to the Studio EQ plugin, which is the same, it just gives us more flexibility for signal processing. So I could, come over here and have this automatically, run all these inserts through this channel EQ and roll off all of the low end if we wanted to. So a lot of times it just gives you more flexibility of where the EQ is put within the signal flow. So if you wanted the EQ to go in between the maximizer and the delay, you could, just do this. Whereas this, we could put it before the inserts or after the inserts, but we can't put this in the middle of the inserts, and that's what the Studio EQ, having it as a separate plugin, allows you to do. So just a little more flexibility. All right, always wonderful to see John Costigan from Kenosha, Wisconsin. Sorry, my chat field just jumped. All right, so we see Rich B says, using the logical editor, is there a way to move tracks to an existing folder? So I don't think that the logical editor allows you to move tracks to a folder. So I don't know of a function for doing that. So, generally it's just going to be kind of drag and drop of putting tracks, into the folder. So, but there's nothing that I see in the project logical editor, and I'll take a look just to make sure, that allows us to, for an action like a track operation, to we could connect it to groups, we could connect it to inputs, but not necessarily, we don't really have the ability of selecting a folder to move tracks in and out of with the project logical editors. It just has to be kind of done manually. But I'll pass that along as input and feedback. All right, so we have Matt Elder from Toronto. It just says, I'm not sure if you're able to spill the tea or what, but I was just wondering if there's any improvements to the drum maps in Cubase 13. Third party can be unusable, so we can't really talk about, drum map. We can't really talk about features or I'm not permitted to talk about features until release date. But let me know what's unusable. I mean, you can make drum maps. One of the unique aspects is, with Groove Agent, that Groove Agent can automatically create a drum map. Most third-party plugins don't have that capability. You could create one manually. So if we added an instrument track, we can come over here, and when we get to drum maps, you could go to your drum map setup. And if you just wanted to go to functions, you can create a new map and just kind of start from scratch. And that would be the same for, any plugin, but I'm not sure if you could share, what is, what part of the drum maps are not useful for, and that are not editable. That would be helpful to me. Okay, so we have a question. Sorry, let me just. Okay, so we see from Cubase users, question, how to turn off the peaks of the MIDI out. You can see it where the time signature or BPM on the bottom right. I have that all the time peaking, even if you're not using MIDI. How to fix that. So when we see this, it's often some devices, and Yamaha kind of does this, It's basically like a MIDI status message. If I'm just blanking on the MIDI term for it, but basically it's just doing a handshake saying that it's, that it is saying, hey, I'm here if you need me, I'm here if you need me. So your controller is actually spitting that out, and Cubase is registering that. So it's active sensing is the term. So you could turn off, you may be able to turn off active sensing for your MIDI controller, but that's what Cubase is seeing. So it's actually functioning correctly. I know it could be annoying. All right, I think we have Marcos on. Thanks for joining us today from Brazil. All right, so we have a question. Hi, Greg. When I activate multi-channel out on a VST instrument, let's say a drum sampler, I only see the channels in Mixer. How can I make them visible on the left side as separate tracks, Cubase 12 Pro? Okay. So we'll come over here. Let's open up this project. So I have it set up here. Okay, so I have multiple outputs for this instrument, and if we want to see them on the project window, if you go to the instrument track, you'll see this little show hide automation and then all of the outputs. So as we play the outputs, these are all the multi-outs from Groove Agent here. So if we just open this up, you can see kind of our multi-outputs. So click just in the bottom left-hand corner, and that will expose them on the main project window. So here's just the instrument track, and now when we open up kind of to expand the automation, that automation is automatically showing all of the outputs for that instrument. All right, so we have the artist known as Love from New York, just saying everyone hit the thumbs up button. All right, and then we see from follow-up question, and how can I render the separate audio channels to audio? So we have everything routed to different outputs here. So if I wanted to render that, since this is the output and I have this started as an instrument track, all I have to do is we go to Edit, and let's go to Render in Place. We'll go to our render settings. I'm just going to choose our channel settings and hit Render. And as we do that, now we have our files kind of broken down. Our kick, snare, hi-hat, all kind of broken up. And this will probably be our room. Stereo out. So that's how you do it. So just select it, go to Edit, to Render in Place, and we'll go to Render Settings. And while we're here, I did have a question of how to turn these into mono sources. So if I wanted, so we see that these are all going to stereo. If I wanted this to export as mono sources instead of stereo, what we could do, this question is mailed in, and we'll get to it while we're here. We're in the neighborhood. So we'll choose our export audio mix down. I'm going to select multiple, and we'll say, okay, I want that output and all of these outputs, and we'll choose export as a mono down mix. And at this point, we'll create an audio track, and we will choose to export audio. And I set the left and right locators around the event. And as we do this now, it's going to render the multiple files. All the files will be as mono. So we come here, our mono kick. etc. So you can export them as mono, stereo, or see all your outputs just by clicking right there. Okay, so we see from Semog Engineer, which I think is Marcos. How are you doing? So I'm doing great today. So thanks for being online. All right, so we see from yeah, so if we could see the same question from Debzik Music. So, we already answered that. So, just in the future, if you don't see an immediate answer to your question, if we just refrain from asking the same question over and over again, we'll get to it in time. All right, so Silver Wolf asks, hey Greg, I have a MIDI track in the project zone, and there's a 3-dot symbol in the upper right-hand corner. I was wondering what that means. All right, so let's take a look. So I'm just looking for the 3-dot. So I wonder if it's like these 3 dots. If it looks something like this can allow you to kind of hide or expose, different controls. So you can say, okay, I want that for my functions, but I need more options, and you could choose to kind of have an abbreviated set of controls or more extended controls. And this may also, you could have it on a left and right zone. So if we go to setup, let's say, so it may also kind of differentiate, but usually when we see like the 3 dots like that in the program, we could now come over and pick and choose to see more or less data as you hold down the mouse and move left to right. That could expose more controls. Let me know if it's these particular type of dots that you're seeing, and if that is it, then that's the intention of it. Okay, so we see from Cubase user question, can you demonstrate different ways of sending parallel processing to vocals via send or duplication to thicken up vocals, like distortion or compression? What's the best approach in Cubase? All right, so just open up project here with some. Just look for, all right, so all right, so when you do parallel processing, there's a number of ways of doing it. Some people will duplicate it. That's not necessarily, some could argue that's not necessarily parallel. What I would do is, so let's say we want to just listen to our file.
Do you recall the day we first met? That was a long, long time ago.
All right, so let's say I want to do like a parallel processing, or I want to take 2 different versions of the track. So most people will do this from sends. You could also use direct output. So I'm going to add 2 group tracks. Okay, we're going to make them, in this case, stereo. We'll add 2 group tracks. Okay, now as we come to our track, what we want to do now is we're going to route these to our groups. So say group 1, group 2. Okay, we're going to come over here. Let's just send it. We'll send it roughly the same. So now when we play our vocal track, we're going to see
The
it
7th grade in the school parking lot.
being sent directly to our different groups. So as we look at this,
Waiting
we
on
see.
our yellow coach to ferry us home.
So often what you want to do is maybe compress one group very heavily. And if you wanted to add distortion, stuff like that, so let's just go ahead and kind of squash this group. So if we bring this down.
You looked my way and your heart shone through. It caught my breath while you called me to.
And let's add, sometimes people will add a little bit of like a high shelf. So if you wanted to come here, okay, so we have this set for high shelf 1, and let's just go ahead and boost that. So we'll make this one brighter. We could add a little bit of distortion. Let's come over here to maybe saturation and add a bit of magneto, and we could drive the magneto here.
Well, leaving now, I'm so in love with you.
So this
Just like a long, long time.
group is heavily processed, and what we want to do is leave this group kind of, fairly natural. So when we bring these in, we'll just say, okay.
Day we first met, that was a long, long time ago.
So I could blend like the original.
It was 7th grade in the school parking lot, waiting on our yellow coach to ferry us.
And we could just kind of blend this signal in.
You looked my way and your heart shone through. It caught my breath while you called me to. Well, leaving now, I'm so in love
So if we
with
mute.
you. Just like a long, long time ago. Oh, I remember the day that we went. Seems like a long, long time ago. And our first kiss, there was no regret. Right after that Garth Brooks show, you told your daddy it.
So basically, again, what we're doing is sending this to 2 paths in parallel. And if we, you don't do it with sends, because sends will kind of go in series. But when we go to our sends, this is sending it to group 1 to group 2 at the same time, and we process those differently. And that's how you do parallel compression. It's kind of an easy way of doing it. All right, so you see, hi Greg, I'm on Nuendo. How can I see ghost notes? So if you have, I'll just, all right, so we have these notes really high. So what I want to do is just select both events. And I think ghost notes, you mean that you want to see kind of multiple events. So at this point, we could just, I'll give these a different name. Let me just, I'll take this one down. Let me just, All right, so now we will look at both. I'm going to select both events here. We'll go into, let's say, our key editor, and we'll show this. So, and I'm going to change the color on one of them so we could differentiate it. Okay, so I'm going to choose to colorize by part just to make this a little more obvious. So now we could choose, and let me just give a different name to that. Okay, so we could choose which part is being edited. So as soon as we click on one event, we're now editing this voice. We can click on this and edit this voice, but still see the other events. So let me know if that's what you mean by ghost notes. So here we could, view multiple events, and even if we have something like a more orchestral type of project, just show this. We could select, let's say, all of our strings. And we will colorize by part. So now we could just come over here and say, okay, now I'm editing the bass parts. That's active. I want to edit the cello parts. I want to active, my violin 2. So you could see all the different parts and have that choose which one is active. And you could also just click, and this is the one I'm editing just directly here. So let me know if that's helpful for you. All right. Okay. All right, so just my chat field jumped. So Gerald Ely just says active sensing. So that's what's happening. I thought it was a problem with my old keyboard. It's just kind of transmitting. It's kind of like a little software handshake. So. All right, so we see Doug O. Hi, Greg. Is there a way to export multiple instrument tracks or effects tracks as a track preset, or are these intended for one track? I'm trying to reduce use of project templates. Any recommendations? All right, so let me just jump back here quick. All right, and let me just revert this. So let's take a look. Let's say if we have multiple instruments, and I'll just duplicate this quickly. Okay, so if we have this set up, right click, and then you could say save track preset. We'll say to Verve piano. Okay, so at this point, let's go to our track preset. So, if you don't want the content on there, we can now come over here. Let's go to user presets, track presets, to VST instruments. And let me just make sure I saved it. All right. All right, might have to be just updated, but let's say if I'm in a new project here, right, and we will add track using track preset. We may have to look under I think kind of with multi. Let me just see if we come back over to Verve here. So we'll say user presets. So here we select multi, sorry. And then we'll see our two Verve pianos, drag and drop, and then you could have both of those. If we have, so again, you could just, so multi instruments, let's try, I'm not sure if effects tracks will work, but let's give it a shot. Okay, so let's say we have our revelation. Let's see if we save track preset. 3 revelation. Okay, so here's our 3 revelation. I'll drag that over and they're all kind of preserved. So you can do it, but just make sure that when you go to your user presets, and then say track presets multi, and then you can see the 2 Verve and 3 revelation. You could also, so let me know if that'll work for you, Doug. All right, always great to see you, Spike Williams from Rhonda Wales. Thanks for joining us this evening in your time. All right, so we see, hi Greg, is there a way to set up a velocity randomization for hats in a MIDI instrument? So let's say we have, we'll just say F#1 in this event. And let's say, so I'll switch over here. So generally hi-hats will be F#1. I'll just put some in here. All right, and we can see that these are all the same velocity level as we input them. Okay, so if we wanted to randomize, and you can do this with the MIDI logical editor, so you can say, okay, let's go to setup, and you can set this up once. There's probably a preset that does it. So we're going to choose transform. In this way, we could, randomize only the F# notes and maybe not other notes. Imagine that's drums. All right. So we're going to say type is equal to note. I think we could also just say value 1 equals and you could just hit the note here. So we say F sharp 1, which is note 42, or you could just type in F sharp 1, and we want to take value 2, which is the velocity, and we could say set relative random or set random values between, let's say, 70 and 110. So now when I come over here, we could say, let's look at the velocity for our hi-hat. So now if I did this right, it's randomizing the velocity for the hi-hat, but the kick and snare and other drums aren't affected. So this way we can say just take that and randomize only F sharp 1 between these set values. And then you could save that as a preset. So we could just say save preset. We'll say and then you could have a keyboard shortcut just to fire that off every time you need it. Let me know if that's helpful, Lars. All right, so we see Silverwolf says on the track itself in the shape of an acute angle V pointed to the upper right. So I'm not sure if this is in the MIDI editor. Let me just see if it's a continuation. Okay, so it's with the 3-dot symbol in the upper right-hand corner. All right, let me just... All right, so I'm just seeing on the track itself in the shape of an acute angle, V pointed to the upper right. Okay, so I'm not sure if it's this. That will take it to full screen, the arrow. So let me know if it's here in the track or if it's on like the track here for MIDI event. Or if it's on the event. So if it's on the event itself, that could indicate that this part is like a shared copy. Like if you see this, or, you know, if it's like, you know, so it could be, or let me know if it's here, because this could mean that it's, you know, following, that's transposed, or, you know, other states of the event. So if you could let me know if it's on the event, the track, or in the editor. But generally, when you have something like this, it could mean that it's like a shared event. It could mean that, like perhaps this event is transposed. You know, so it could mean that just indicating different functions here on that track. Okay, so we have a question from Thomas. All right, so we see a question. Hello, the restore to default preset is grayed out on every plugin under all circumstances. So if I want to revert to the default preset, I have to remove the plugin and reload it again. Both stock and third-party plugins. So let's just take a look. I will come over here. Let's just add an audio insert. Okay, so I think if we So if we go here, we could, so I'm not sure if it has a necessarily, like it may have a default state for the plugin. So let me just say if I set this to like a dotted quarter note delay, and we save this as a default preset. So I'll say yes. Okay, so let's say now when I could open up Mod Machine again. But so it'll set to default, but a lot of the times the plugins, so let's say if I come over to my mono delay, and we can see now that the plugin, so there could be a default state for the plugin, but I don't think it's the default preset. So maybe if I will come over here, so let's say I want to go to my Mod Machine delay and get rid of that. So, but this is the default state, but it's not loading a default preset. So, we can see that this says default here, that says nothing because there's no default loaded. But let's see if we come over to maybe MediaBay. Let's go to user content. We'll say VST3 presets. We'll go to Steinberg. Let's go to our delay. Okay, maybe under factory, VST3 presets, Steinberg Media. All right, we go to Mod Machine. All right, let's look for default. All right, and then we just look again under Mod Machine here. So if I change this, I'm gonna, okay, so under my user presets, VS user content to VST3 presets, I'm gonna come over here. This is my user preset default. So I'm going to delete that user preset. We'll move it to the trash. And now when I come over, I'm going to open up the Mod Machine again. We'll see if it defaults to whole note delay, which is what it was doing before I changed the delay time. So yeah, so all you have to do is, if you want to get rid of that, go to your Media menu to MediaBay, go to User Content, to VST3 presets, find the plugin, and then where you saved it as default, just right click and delete that, and then you'll go back to the factory state. And you can see that there's no default preset, there's no preset, but that's how the plugin loads up from the factory. So let me know if that's helpful for you. All right, so you see Michael Marshall just saying greetings from Somerset, UK. Glad you could make it this evening. Okay, so I have a question. How to quick slice MIDI note on piano roll to quarter, 8, 16, 32nd, whatever. So, all right, so let's say we have just a long note here. Okay, so all you have to do is if we grab the split tool and hold, so let's say I wanted to cut it to eighth notes, all we have to do is hold down the Alt or Option key with the split tool, and then we've just made, and you can see at the bottom here, a number of different edits. So if whatever interval that I cut from the very first one, so if I want to do like a dotted quarter note, we could do that, and now each dotted quarter will automatically be spaced out for you. So again, from the long note, grab the scissors tool, hold down the Alt or Option key, and split at the interval that you want to do, and that will automatically split that long note. And then you could just use your arrow keys and now you could be a film composer. So all right, so we see from I guess it's hi Greg, question. Hi Greg, can you copy an instrument in Groove Agent? For example, let's say I wanted 2 snares to play the same notes. So it could be different depending on if you're doing it on a if you're doing it on a beat agent versus acoustic agent. Let me just reread it just to make sure. You know, so an easy way of doing this, let me just jump here to a different project. Thanks for all the wonderful questions. And if you've learned a new tip or trick, make sure you do hit the like button. Okay, so let's say we want to, if we're doing an acoustic agent, you know, a lot of times this is easy to do directly with within the MIDI editor itself. So let's say I have okay, so all right, so let's say if I look at this and I go into the editor, I want to double the snare. So we'll come over here, say this is our snare, and I'll just make this larger so it's easier to see. All right, so let's say I want this maybe to trigger, let's say, tambourine. So I want every snare to trigger the tambourine. So I'm going to select all of the snares, hold down the Shift and double click. I'm going to hold down the Alt key. And what I want to do now is hold down the Alt and the Control or Alt Option and then Control Command so that it doesn't move in time. I could select all these particular notes and let's just decrease the velocity. So you could just copy the actual data itself. So that's probably, you know, an easy way of doing it. Or let's say if you wanted to do a rim shot as well, you know, we could just say, okay, I want to take these snares and, you know, or let's say we'll take those snares and copy them to a different, to layer snares up. So you could do stuff like that as well. And if you wanted to just get rid of the lower velocity notes. So that's an easy way of kind of duplicating if you wanted to do it kind of in a beat agent kit. So let's say I wanted to take a pattern here in beat agent. An easy way of doing this, if I open up the instrument this time. So let's say we're playing a particular pattern. So let's say now I take this pattern. So let's say, just clear my throat. All right, so let's say I want to take this pattern and put another sample on top of it. So I could just go to my MediaBay. Let's come over here to drum sample. So you could do the kind of copy events, but but if you want to do kind of a different approach, we could say I want to take a different snare and layer it on the pad. All right, so what I can do now is just drag that onto the pad. And now I could have just, all right. And you see where you have 3 dots. Let me just, all right, let me just get the, all right, so right now we have 2 different snare samples. And if we wanted those to be layered, I could just, instead of having these switch by velocity, we can now just choose to layer those. So now we could just have that one particular pattern that's playing both of those samples layered together. So if I wanted to take another sample, so we could just create kind of like a monster layer if you want. So that way, one particular sample, you could just, build up and have all sorts of different snares kind of stacked together. So if you're doing beat agent kit, that's an approach. You could copy parts like you did with the acoustic agent, but let me know if those would work for you. All right, we see from the Heartbreak Time Machine, it says, I learn so much every time I watch a stream. I've been using DAWs for 30 plus years, and I still know nothing. So I usually learn something new every live stream as well. So I think it's a cool format for learning a bunch of tips and tricks that you may not have experienced otherwise. All right, my chat field just jumped. All right, so I think I'm back where I was. All right, so we have Lauren Scott just saying, hi, Greg. Thanks. All right, so we see Tebzik music. So, you don't have to repeat the same question over and over again. Just kind of slows it all down. So I have to read through all the questions. So once you ask it, we'll get to it in time. All right. All right, so we see from Lawrence, it says, anyway, hi Greg, I'd asked about the missing drum instruments in Groove Agent SE7, sorry, SE5. Were you able to take a look at that in your licensed version of Groove Agent SE? So yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at it. So I just came over, we're playing it a little earlier in this project. So I believe it's the Simon Phillips Studio Drums. So I'll activate this project here. Okay, so open it up and we'll go to our instruments. So when I come over here, so this is in Groove Agent SE5, and I think you had, so we have the octobonds, all your cymbals. We have Simon's 3 snares, all the toms, and I think you had about the floor tom and the kind of the big gong tom and the kicks. So they all seem to be playing, directly without any issues in Groove Agent SE. So, the one thing maybe is just to delete the content and maybe download the content fresh just to make sure there wasn't any content corruption during the download process, or maybe some of the samples. But it seems to me, Lawrence, like all the drum samples are coming through kind of as expected on Groove Agent SE. So yeah, this is just a monster kit. So anyone's looking for a great drum kit to Simon Phillips. This is a welcome addition to any, and then you could even come over here and adjust the overhead, and if you wanted to just come over here, you could also have different triggers for the kicks as well. So if you wanted to have more of an electro trigger, so all sorts of great stuff you could do with that kit. So, but it seems like everything is working kind of as expected here on my end. So maybe if you just delete the VST sound files and re-download them and see if that fixes the problem for you. Or maybe check also, that you don't have a limitation on RAM. So you could go to the options and setup. So maybe one thing that you might want to check is, maybe adjust the preload amount here and to raise that up. And you could also adjust maybe how much is being streamed from the disk versus RAM. So if it's like a memory issue, I tend not to think that, but maybe adjust that and see if perhaps if you have multiple kits open that it's not loading up because there's not enough memory. Sometimes you'll get a message kind of indicating that when you're opening up the kit. But it could be one of those messages that you say, don't show this message again, kind of thing. All right, so we see from John Roddy, if you have a film project in Nuendo 12, which consists of groups, i.e. group for dialogue, sound effects, and for music, is it possible to convert the project to Dolby Atmos project, keeping the groups intact? So I think basically you would take the groups and route that to your bed, but the groups should be intact, so no problem with that. All right, so we have Robert Higgins checking in from MediaBay. Thanks for joining us this evening. All right, so we see just a quick question from Ralph Nelson Tucker about tilt EQ. So there isn't necessarily, I think it's about tilt EQ, may have been mailed in advance. But a lot of times, even if we go to kind of the channel EQ here, so let's say if we do this, a tilt EQ is often like maybe activating a high shelf and low shelf, and move this one down as you move this one up. I'll just kind of, so you may have to do 2 buttons, or if you say, okay, move this one down, move this one up, so you could kind of simulate the tilt EQ, but it's not where we could just take the frequencies and move it. You may have to do it in 2 different steps. Okay, so you see from Silverwolf just saying the 3 dots are on the event. So let's see if we can create that. So we have kind of when we do a shared copy, we have the 2 dots here. Let's say if it is, I know sometimes if we come over here, if we put it into musical mode for like an audio event, we see this indicating it's in musical mode. And I think that there is, like, if something has been transposed, maybe that there is, let me add a transpose track. And let's see if we set this transpose mode to independent. You see this little note here, but it just means that that particular MIDI event is kind of in a special, that event is kind of in a particular state as well. I don't know what the 3 dots are. Sometimes they just kind of appear, but I'll keep my eye out and see if I see 3 dots as we're going through the live stream. But if you want to send me a quick picture, I could do some research on it afterwards as well. And you could email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right, so we have Neil Conway checking in from Oregon. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we see from Mike Rivera, hello, Greg. I have Cubase crashing a lot, even at startup. How can I find the problem? So what I would do is hold down Command-Option-Shift on Mac or Alt-Control-Shift on Windows and start it with no third-party plugins and see if you get crashes when it's just the stock Cubase plugins. A lot of times when this happens, it's going to be a third-party plugin that's misbehaving. So, see if you have the same behaviors without third-party plugins, and then what you could do is kind of introduce different third-party plugins a few at a time and see if that makes a difference in the behavior. But I would try that first, and then you could isolate it and know that it is plugin related. All right, so we see from Drowsy Eternal, hey Greg, if I put all my plugins and loop sounds or VST on a new hard drive, how can I make Cubase find them? So with the Steinberg instruments, so other companies may have a particular system for doing it, but if you go to the Steinberg Library Manager, which is just a program that's installed with your Cubase, at this point you could set a default file over here, and if you go to settings, you could see, okay, now we have come over here. This is where Cubase is looking for all of the content. You could also, for all the content, and you could do this for Halligan, for all the groove agent content for all your Cubase content and sound sets and loops. And you could just come over here from the library manager and you could choose to move to a particular folder one at a time, or just globally set a folder here and have Cubase, once you move it over to like your new drive, just say Cubase look here for all the content, and then it will link and make the association for you. All right, the Heartbreak Time Machine asks, have we all smashed that like button? So. All right, so I see just from is it Drazi Eternal fixed length. So let me just. So I'm not sure if there's a question with that, but let's take a look. So let's see. If I come and let's say. So a lot of times when we come, let's say we have just a series of notes. Let's see if it's under the MIDI menu or go fixed lengths. So let's say I want these all to be quarter notes, and let's see if we go to MIDI. Then we can make them all quarter notes or in intervals of quarter notes. So let me know maybe if you could give a little more detail with that, or if that's helpful. All right, we have a question from OEW. Hi, Greg. Out of the stock instruments, I think it was about, sorry, my chat field just jumped. I think it was looking for a didgeridoo preset. All right, so let's just take a look. All right, so it's probably going to be under ethnic. Okay, let me just look. I'll just look in the MediaBay here and see. Just being sure someone didn't spell it differently. All right, so it looks like so it looks like maybe there's one. So if you look under the High Sonic SE2 artist library, and they spell, I think in a question you spelled it with a DID, but it looks like in the preset just DIGERIDOO. So if you go to libraries, we'll say High Sonic artist library. And then you'll see the didgeridoo there. All right, it's the first didgeridoo question we've had in the live stream, I think. All right, always wonderful to see Lawrence Koch from Rhode Island. See, Drowsy Eternal just says, I wonder who sat all day and programmed all the Cubase commands. Like a really smart German person, probably. Okay, so we see from Benny, question, I have a bit of distortion on the vocals when I record. None of my meters switch to red. Neither in the sound card nor the program. The card nor the program. What do you think it could be? Cubase 12 Pro. So sometimes when you have distortion, like, you know, if you're recording a distorted guitar, the source is distorted before you capture it. So you may capture it cleanly in Cubase or through your audio interface, but if it's distorting at the mic preamp level, but the level is not distorting at the conversion stage or the converter or within Cubase, you know, it captured a clean signal of the distorted signal. So I would always, in situations like that, go to the very first source and make sure that, you know, and if it's kind of like that, you know, it's outside of Cubase's realm, but, you know, think of it as you know, recording a distorted guitar intentionally because you like that sound, that source is distorted before you capture it in Cubase with proper gain staging. So check your mic preamp, you know, and make sure that that is set up there. You know, you may have to put a pad on the mic preamp. It's really easy to add the gain afterwards if you're kind of in the ballpark. But, you know, a lot of times, you know, if you have kind of the gain structure set incorrectly, Cubase can capture, and your audio interface can capture the source, but the source itself may be distorted. And that's often something I hear. All right, so we see, I think that Groove Agent 5 should be free for Cubase 12 Pro buyers. I paid so much for 11 Pro to upgrade to the Pro 12 version, in my honest opinion. So, you know, I have a Volkswagen car, and I think it's the same company that owns Audi. I don't expect to get, you know, an Audi part free with my Volkswagen car. So, you know, you do have a tremendous amount of functionality with the included tool. But I'll pass along the, you know, the sentiment regardless. So we see from SDCC, anyone still have problems with the sampler track crashing the program? So I haven't run into that. So okay, so we see Drazi Eternal says, what's the difference between Cubase AI and Pro? Hang on, just let me clear my throat. All right, sorry about that. So Cubase AI is the version that comes, and we think of the AI for advanced integration. It's not artificial intelligence. This is advanced integration. So that comes bundled with Yamaha or Steinberg hardware. Cubase LE is bundled with third-party hardware. AI will have some unique, advanced integration between the hardware and the software. So that's what the AI stands for, and it's a subset of features below Cubase Elements. And Cubase Pro would have, much more effects, more tracks, more capabilities for editing. Vari Audio is introduced in Cubase Artist and higher, Dolby Atmos, more plugins. So AI is a subset of features, but that again comes with Yamaha or Steinberg branded hardware, and that's the bundled version. All right. Sorry, my chat field jumped. Find my spot. All right, so I think I'm in the neighborhood. All right, so you see Willie the Pimp says Jazz-Duba Groove Agent 5 is like having an MPC or a machine. My friend has it. It has note repeat, etc. I wish that pro users could have it. So all you have to do is, purchase Groove Agent 5, purchase the full version. And it's obviously a lot less than getting a machine or an MPC. So if you're thinking of getting the hardware, I would just upgrade and get the functionality found in Groove Agent 5. Or if you got Absolute 6, that comes with it with a whole slew of other instruments kind of bundled together at like a ridiculous price. All right, you see some discussion of the song Moon River. All right, always so wonderful to see Pablo on the live stream. We haven't seen, so far I haven't seen comments from Michael Teams, but glad you can make it. He's on a tour bus, but still popped in to say hello and hopefully hit the like button. So thanks for spending a little bit of your evening on a tour bus with us. Always so wonderful to see Sable Winters from Bay Area. All right, so we see a question, how to reorder channels on the mixing console in Cubase 12 Pro, as the way to reorder these channels by dragging the left directly on the console. So the console is going to be fixed and just reflecting what's on the project window. So instead of doing it in the console, and I know it can be a bummer, but just take the particular track here and move it up, and then you could just move it and get everything reorganized there from the project window, and that will reflect in the mix console. See Pablo just saying, what a didgeridoo in Cubase, insane. So yeah, sorry, it took me a while to find it, but See, John Costigan is taking blame if Pablo has a bad performance because he's in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and Pablo is probably in Spain, going or coming back from a gig. Okay, so we see from Mr. Cucumber, how can I split stereo channel in mono on the arranger area? Okay. I'll just import stereo track. Okay, so we have our stereo track here. So I'm going to select the track, not the event, but the track. Go to project menu and we'll see convert tracks. And we'll say multi-channel to mono and hit OK. And now we have our left and right channels. And that's derived from our stereo track. So now if I just want to play the left. So we could just do it just like that, or if you want to play. So once again, select the track, go to project, convert tracks, multi-channel to mono, and of course we could select two mono tracks, and conversely, go to convert tracks, and we'll say mono to multi-channel, hit OK, and now we've converted it back to a stereo track with both channels. All right, we have a question from Gerald Ely. Hi, Greg. I've created a Groove Agent track, and I drag a pattern from the instrument edit window to the track, but instead the pattern going to the Groove Agent track goes to a new MIDI track. Why? Okay, so I'll just do this with a new project so we could show this. Sorry, I'll just do a new project and just create empty. Okay, so we're going to add a Groove Agent track. Okay, so let's say we have patterns here. I had to pick the weirdest drum kit possible, so let me just try another one that's a little more conventional. Okay, so when we drag a file, I'm going to make this large so that if I just take this pattern and drag it over, you'll see like the little white lines. If I drag this, I'm not on the track, it's going to add a MIDI track. So, but as we drag, so I'll undo that. What I want to do is to make sure we see this white line indicating where in time the track is going to be placed, but we also see a little blue line, and that indicates what track. So just above my cursor, you see the blue line, and what we can do now is that indicates which particular track that we're dragging this to. So if I add, let's say, a number of instrument tracks here. So if I kind of drag it to an empty spot, it's So I can see the blue line. So if I let go now, it's going to be onto this second track because that's where the blue line indicates. We see the blue line is only on that track. If I move up to this track, it's at the top track. Move down. So that indicates exactly which track it's going to be dropped onto. So make sure that that blue line is kind of exactly where you want it, or if it's, you just kind of drag it in, it'll add a MIDI track. So because you're telling it not to go to this particular track that's in the project. So just check that blue line on top of the white line. And you can see that as I move it, that blue line indicates which track it's going to be dropped into. So once you see that and it's on the track you expect, let go and you'll be all set. All right, great to see Michael Pierce on the live stream. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we see Captain Energy Music from Harrisburg. So just got back to his home office. And don't worry about missing the first part of the live stream. You just have to hit the like button, which you just did. All right. All right, so we see just comment about, I think, layering in the groove agent from, is it Natalia Bastian? Thanks for letting me know. All right, my chat field jumped on me. All right. All right, so we see from SDCC, I just did this stop third-party plugins, and it works. Thank you. So, and that way, what you could do is you could try importing like different tracks, and you know, you could do an import tracks from project, and then maybe you could isolate to a particular plugin. See, we see from Draws the Eternal. Okay, I thought it was artificial intelligence. Thanks, Greg. With the, I guess I was referring to the Cubase AI name. So yeah, it was the advanced integration that started probably 2006 with when Yamaha first started doing some USB audio interfaces under the Steinberg brand. So I believe it was like 2006 with a CI1, CI2 interface. So it was before artificial intelligence. It was that smart, that intelligent. All right, so Neil Conway is happy because his son is out in Oregon and love is in the air. Sounds good. All right, so we have a question from SDCC. How is the listen bus different from just hearing the mix? Okay, so let's go ahead and go over. So what the listen bus is going to allow you to do is to, when we're actually working on a particular track, so like when we hit solo is going to mute all of the tracks, and we hear only the particular, you hear only the track that is soloed. So I'll just quickly revert this so we're starting from a known state. So the listen bus works in conjunction with the control room. So let's say, you know, we're here and I wanted to solo just the snare of this track. So we come over here, go to snare top. So now all the tracks get muted. But what the listen bus will allow us to do, and we could see the controls for the listen bus in the control room. We click on the main tab to reveal them kind of below. is that we could dim the tracks. So instead of soloing, if I wanted to hear the tracks but dim them, the listen bus will allow you to dim. Now, if you have someone that's actually tracking in the studio, so say you're recording multiple musicians, and at that point you're like, okay, and you're just listening in the control room while musicians are tracking, what you could do is, if you hit the solo button, you just pretty much soloed like one track for all the musicians. If we don't want to affect, so when we hit the listen bus, this is strictly in the control room. So it doesn't affect the mix that people are hearing in like their Q mix for their headphones. Now, something else it's really good for is, let's say on this snare I have a reverb as an effects return. So I'll just say, we'll come here, let's add a revelation. And as we go to our snare, let's go to our sends. All right, and so if I solo the reverb, so we'll come here, we have our effects return channel, and I solo the reverb. We hear the original source as well. So if I hit the listen on a reverb, now I'm only hearing the reverb return soloed. So now I could come over here and say, oh, I really want to take my low end here, roll off the low end on the reverb. So we could isolate and truly solo just the reverb return, whereas soloing will solo the return channel and the source feeding it. And you could set up different amounts of how the listen is dimmed as well, just kind of right there. So that's some of the, we could think of it as not, as kind of dimming the other tracks as opposed to muting the other tracks. And the flexibility you get with the being able to isolate the effects without the source signals is also really handy for tweaking the various functions and tweaking the effects return channels. So we see Pablo is just saying it's secret gems in Cubase. All right. See, Uno Memento, just sad that Michael Teams isn't here passing out ice cream. All right, so we see Pablo just saying it's almost 9 o'clock in Galicia and it's night. And it's like, autumn is here. So, yeah, see, we have like one more month before daylight saving times where my son gets to come home from school in the dark. So, great to see Ash Rebel Hen Studios on. So great that you could join us last week for our Zoom meetup. Okay. Pablo is saying Michael Teams is on his holiday surrounded by mountains of ice cream. So it sounds like a good place to be. So you see from Jazzy Eternal, that first drum kit sounded a bit like Soundscapes. I think it was like an orchestral one. All right. Sorry, my chat just jumped on me. All right, so we see from Gerald Ely says, as a follow-up to my Groove Agent question about dragging, I made sure that the blue line was on a Groove Agent track and it still created a new MIDI track. Thanks. Yeah, I don't know if you have the ability to do like a quick screen capture of something, but maybe if other people could try it and see if it's still creating, you know, different MIDI parts. But let me know if I did anything differently than you, Gerald. All right, reading through comments. All right, so we see Mr. Cucumber. Why can't I do stationary cursor on the arranger area? I can work it only in the editor area. So it could depend on your level of zoom. So if you're not familiar with this, so let's say if we are on our stationary cursor, if you're not familiar with the stationary cursor, we could just come over here. And as I play, let's say this project, so we get to the middle, it's going to just appear like the stationary cursor isn't working because it doesn't have to do a screen redraw. So at this point, if I want to zoom in a good amount, so now as we play, once we get to the center, you'll see that the waveforms will move. So I'll just put on, again, stationary cursor and we'll suspend. So I'll just activate it. But if the project window is not zoomed in where it needs to redraw, it won't move. But if there is a redraw needed, at that point the stationary cursor will function. So if I zoom out, stationary cursor, you may not notice it working, but we zoom in, then you notice that it's going to be working. Because there's, I guess, nothing to be stationary about if it's not redrawing the waveform. So make sure that your zoom level is set accordingly to take advantage of the stationary cursor. All right. See, Uno Memento just says, these streams have become a way of life for me. Where applicable, my wife sometimes asks if you don't have anything else to do on Tuesday and Friday evenings. I say it could be, but should it be? So I guess I've heard from other people, they treat it like a TV show they watch twice a week. So hopefully it's entertaining and you get to learn something as well. All right, so we see from SDCC, oh wow, that reverb soloing on the listen bus is something I was trying to figure out. Thank you so much, super helpful. Yeah, listen bus is a wonderful thing. All right, we see a comment from Pablo that he loves mixing in Cubase, so that's good. All right, so we see hi from Jordan. How to convert my MIDI tracks or RX4 as mixed GM MIDI file. So, when you have MIDI tracks, so what I would do before exporting the MIDI tracks, so let me just... So if you wanted all of the sounds, I'll just do new project here. So I would start off with, when you go and start working, there is a general MIDI bank inside of Hallian Sonic. So like when we go to GM sounds at this point, so let's say, okay, I wanted to add a piano. We could just if you come to the search, and I think if we just come over here, so let's say we do piano, and then you say all, you'll see like GM 002 GM. So look for these banks, and you could actually just search for these particular banks. And as you do this, let's say, okay, we now have our general MIDI bank, and you could, once you've done that, also you could test out all the sounds. And when you come here, you want to have it work as a general MIDI file. You could export a particular MIDI file, and let's say if we are here, we go to the sounds, and you could see your bank and program changes. So we could say I want to come over here, and we could just choose kind of like your different general MIDI banks. And then when you export it, so let's say and this may make more sense if you're doing MIDI tracks as well that are routed to the particular instrument. So when we do your MIDI track, you could see your bank and program change. So once you come over here, so once you select kind of the GM sound, so let's say I was looking for let me just find the bracket here. Get the right bracket. So here are just kind of search for like, bracket GM, and these will be all your general MIDI sounds, so you know that it's going to translate. And then once you have those set up, all you have to do is you could export your MIDI file. And as soon as you export your MIDI file, you'll have different options where you could automatically export it, with the inspector volume, with the program change. So you could say export inspector patch. And if these are lined up, that would align with the general MIDI, so that program change is embedded in the standard MIDI file. So just use the GM bank inside of Hallian Sonic SE, and that way you know that all of the different program changes will align for general MIDI devices. See, great comment from Neil Conway. I could have saved so much money by using Cubase in the default plugins. So. See, Ash Rebel Hen Studios has interesting information from Tokyo Dawn Labs. They don't make a dual mono compressor. In their manual, they actually say it screws with phase, is a revelation. So, Pablo saying the control room in Cubase is, of course, a game changer. All right, so we see from a question, is there an option to choose, let me clear my throat, sorry. Is there an option to choose random velocities to make certain sounds more natural? So there's a number of different approaches for it. If you have, let's say if we have a number of MIDI notes here, and these are all the same velocity, let's say, okay, these are all like roughly 100, and you could actually choose, so, but you know, if you wanted to put in different values, you could set up a key command and say, okay, now I'm going to put in notes that are 50, or notes that are a velocity value of one, you know, let's say 70. So you could do that, but let's say we want to randomize velocities. So if we go to the MIDI part here, and you'll see a MIDI modifiers tab. If you don't see it, right click and make sure that you have a check mark next to MIDI modifiers. Once you have MIDI modifiers, you could choose different random targets. So you can say, let's randomize velocity, and we can say between 70 and 120. So we'll say minimum value 70, and let's say 120, and this will affect it on playback. So I'll just draw in some notes here just to highlight this. So let's get to our drum editor, and let's just put in some quarter notes. Okay, so let's just listen to this. All right, so we could see that, you know, we could have, and this is going to be on playback. So we could now at this point, if we come and go to your MIDI and choose freeze MIDI modifiers, we can now just have those notes randomized. So again, we can say, let's just choose our random target of velocity. I'll just type the values in for this event. All right, so all right, so now when we go to your freeze, it's not. We just and another method, so you could use that to randomize it, and that would do it on playback until you freeze. But you could also just take the logical editor, come here and just say, okay, I want to take MIDI notes. So I'll remove this. We'll say we're going to take MIDI notes, and we're going to take value 2 and randomize velocities between 70 and 110. So you could just do that as well. So you could randomize velocities, pitches, lengths, just about any function you want. All right. All right, so we see from Ash Rebel Hand Studios. Hi, Greg. Hi, all. The live Zoom was great. Can't wait to hear more from y'all. So thanks for joining us. We realized it was like 5 in the morning in Brisbane, Australia. So thanks for making it out. It's wonderful to have you on the Zoom. It's always great to see you on the live streams as well. Okay, so we see from Mr. Cucumber says I zoomed the Ranger area very close, sir. So when we're doing that again, just make sure there's also one other setting that could affect it. So let's say we're here and we're zoomed in. So let's say we're zoomed in here. And it could be there's a setting here for suspend when editing. So if I double click and I have an event selected, it may not work. But you could also just, so make sure that when you go to the drop down, that suspend auto scroll and editing is turned off. And then click here. And then we can see it'll redraw. So make sure that this setting here, suspend auto scroll when editing, isn't checked, because if you have a part selected, then it could stop the stationary cursor from happening. All right. So we see Sable Winters is passing out virtual ice cream in lieu of Michael Teams' absence. That's very kind of you, Sable. And in the spirit of the community of Club Cubase live streams. So. All right, so you see from Gerald Ely on dragging from Groove Agent to the Groove Agent track. I did the way you did. I just got a different result. It's just an annoyance. I moved to the pattern of Groove Agent track and delete the MIDI track. So yeah, I mean, if you want to, share a video, even if it's from cell phone or screen capture in a free utility like OBS, let me know. I'd be happy to take a look at it just in case. All right, so we had a question. Hey, Greg, I asked a question last time, but I guess my intention was unclear. Is it possible to select multiple channels and set a random initial panning value to each channel? So if it's, let me know if it was MIDI or if it's set up for like automation on like the pan on an audio track. I think we could do it in MIDI. So let's say if we had a MIDI event here, so I'll just go to add an instrument track. All right, so I'm just going to draw in some notes here. All right, so if we, let's say we take this, and if you let me know if it's for audio tracks, I think we hooked up the LFO last time to do that, but let's go to, and I will come over to the MIDI and let's add, let's say pan, CC10, I think we had some logical editor presets for. Okay, where you say insert CC1. So right now what we did is, what you could do if it's for MIDI data is just to come over and we could insert the pan value and that would match the notes. But we could also, instead of choosing this to set to fixed value, we could say set to random values between 30 and 90. So for MIDI, we could just randomize the panning based on the note velocity. But let me know if it's for audio or like, you know, for the audio mixer or for MIDI events. All right, see some discussion of dual mono compressors. All right, wonderful to see Peter check in from Montreal. Thanks for joining us today. See, Peter had the misfortune to visit his local Costco warehouse. Definitely on his most dreaded list. Yeah, I always get stressed out at Costco, so I don't go there anymore. So it just seems like they just want you to keep buying huge quantities of stuff that I'll never go through. All right, so we see from Home Studio World just says many thanks to you, Steinberg. So hopefully I'll help with your MIDI files. Okay. Okay, so we see a question from Doug O. Hi, Greg. Can you explain when you'd export to MIDI versus a MIDI loop versus an instrument preset? I think it's a crossover, so I wanted to understand each option and when to use one over the other. Okay, so MIDI files will just have the MIDI notes and could have tempo information, but they could have a program change that could work to a particular instrument. Generally, the program changes if you're sending it to a general MIDI instrument. Will, you know, do a program change and go to that. If it's a general MIDI instrument, like it should be roughly the same bass sound, the same string sound. So that's what MIDI files are. So often you could have multiple tracks in a MIDI file. A MIDI loop is going to be a single event, and a MIDI loop is tied to a particular VST instrument and tied to that particular sound. So when we have a MIDI loop and we import a MIDI loop, the instrument is loaded, the sound is loaded, and it will play back exactly with the correct sound. So MIDI file can't load up the VST instrument. It's not going to necessarily guarantee the same sound. You could have a program change. That program change and bank change may send to a similar sound, or it may not. VST track presets will allow you, or instrument, let me just make sure. So when we do track presets can recall the instrument, but not recall any notes on the part. So just recall as kind of the state of the instrument. And at that point, the instrument. So when it's recalled, at that point, it will not. It'll load up all the settings for the instrument. It could load up all the settings for the EQ, insert effects, the state of the instrument, but it doesn't contain any notes. So MIDI files will contain the notes, but not specifically, what instrument it's going to be for. MIDI and will load into any program. So it's a standard file interchange format. MIDI loops are intended to, I have this part playing through this virtual instrument and I want to be able to drag and drop that into other projects, and is primarily supported by Cubase. Track presets will load up the instrument, but no MIDI notes. So let me know if that makes sense. Okay, so we see from Crazy Jack. So we see, hi Greg, I want to hear the preview in MediaBay on phones and the monitor channels at the same time, but using control room, this is not possible. Am I missing something? I have to go to preferences and tick use phones as preview and then untick it if I want to use it on monitors. I switch constantly. So this is super annoying. So most audio interfaces will allow you to take the output of the monitors and have that same output routed to a headphone output. So you could treat it independently within the control room of Cubase, but most audio interfaces, like audio outs 1 and 2, are mimicked in the headphones. You may have to go into the audio interface control panel to set that up. And if you're using like a built-in sound card, if you plug in headphones, that may negate it going out to speakers. But if you have an audio interface, 99% of them will allow you to mimic the headphone out, mimic outputs 1 and 2. So you could often set it up to do that as well. So on my interface, when I look at it, let's see if we can open up the control panel for it when I have. Let's see, I think it's just kind of fixed to the headphones. So let me just. Yeah, so on my interface, it's like a 2-in, 4-out interface with one headphone. That the headphones are just mimicking outputs 1 and 2, and then you don't have to switch back and forth. So look into your audio interface and just see if you could have the signal that's going out of 1 and 2 and have that routed directly to your headphone output. Just about every audio interface will allow you to do that. Why we have the phones is if you wanted to have one person editing on headphones without being affected, and have it independent of maybe the mix engineer who's doing, who's recording stuff and they're monitoring from the speakers. So you could do it independently, but, set up your audio interface to basically, mimic outputs 1 and 2 to your headphones, and you should be fine. All right, so we see today will occur a Zoom event from Marco. So we did, I think our next one will be on October 31st. We did the last one of the month, so we just did it last Friday on September 29th, I think. So in about 3 weeks. All right, so we see Crazy Jack asks, why do Steinberg separate the audio levels on the previews in MediaBay from everything else? Because if we're playing a project, so let's say we come over here to MediaBay, all right, and I want to go and audition drum loops. We'll come over here. Okay, so say while we're playing, we're at 100, say we're at 100 BPM, and I wanted to audition drum loops. I may want to be able to, as we preview volumes, to adjust the level to get a sense independently. So that's the intention, is that, you know, while you're previewing, if the loop is really low in volume, you can turn it up. If it's really loud, you can turn it down, and audition at different levels so that you don't always have to import it to listen to it in context of the rest of your project. All right. All right, so we see from George, hey Greg, no free warp in Cubase 11 Pro. So Cubase 11 Pro would allows you to do free warp in the sample editor. So when we come over to Cubase 11 Pro, we go to hit points, or we see audio warp, we get enable audio warp, we double click, and now we could place your warp markers and warp like that. What Cubase 12 adds is the ability to do free warp on the project window and for multiple tracks. So now if we switch here to our free warp tool, we can say, okay, let's get a free warp, and I want, and you may have to zoom in. I'll just do it on this track so we can see it a little easier. So as we zoom in, what we could do on free warp is now we could do it on the project window. So as we move an event, we could just warp here, and we could do that across multiple tracks as well. So we come, I want to now warp these tracks. I could take multiple events and warp like two recorded guitar parts together. So we come here, here, and now that those are all selected, we could just warp like a DI and a mic guitar track. So Cubase 11 allows you to do it in a sample editor. Cubase 12, it was one of the main features, allows you to do it on the project window. All right, so we see Gerald Ely says, follow up on a Groove Agent question. It says, I'm having a problem in Groove Agent, but if I use Groove Agent SE, it works just like you said. All right, so let's take a look. Okay, so it could be, so I'm going to add an instrument track. All right, so we do full Groove Agent. All right, so realize that each of these agents, if you're running multiple agents, these could all be, could be independent. So let's see if I do, and I'll load up kind of the same patterns here. Okay. So if I drag this pattern over, it loads up kind of as expected. Now let me grab it from the second agent. Now the second agent could be on a different MIDI channel. So I'll come here to this agent. And as I drag it over, I'll just add I'll add a couple more MIDI tracks. I'll add a MIDI track here. So either one seems to kind of work if I drag and drop, but if I drag and drop elsewhere, that's when it adds the MIDI track. So again, Gerald, let me know if I'm doing something differently, but that's the full groove agent there. All right, just reading through comments. Clear my throat. All right. Yeah, so I see more discussion from Crazy Jack about, doing headphones and monitors. So, that's how I kind of do it all the time, because I have my headphones routed out to where my monitors are going to. So maybe if you could share what audio interface you have and if you've routed the headphone outs to mimic your headphones. And then what you could do is once you have the control room, if you just want to hear the headphones, just come right over here and just turn off the main, and that will mute the speakers and then play out of the headphones. So this way you could just come right here, turn that off, and you can mute the speakers and still hear it from the headphones, or you could hear it in the speakers. So if you just turn this on and off, you could mute the speakers and still have the same routing going to your headphones. See Sable Winters asking Jazz Dude to make it to the October 31st Zoom meetup. So it'd be great to have Jazz Dude there. We don't record it or anything, so. All right, so we see Pablo has to go. Have a wonderful weekend. Thanks for joining us from the tour bus. And we hope that your gigs have been going well. We see Jazz Dude doesn't have any mics or PC or webcams on the studio, so. So we see question. Hi Greg, have you ever experienced Cubase being unable to delete unused media from the media pool? I get this from time to time, perhaps a Windows issue. It might be a Windows permission issue, but sometimes if you've done like audio editing on a particular project, it may go into the edits folder, like the original file may go into the edits folder, so it could still be used until you freeze the processing on that. So if you do like an offline process to an original file, we'll just show here real quick. All right. So if we do processing on this file, whether it's like an offline process, we'll just come here, select this, and let's say we want to reverse. So we'll just come here to process and reverse that audio. So the original is going to be placed into the edits folder. So it could be that it's still used within a project until you've chosen to make all the offline processing permanent. All right, we see Sable Winters has to go. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we see from Tebzik Music, Greg, I have a stereo file. I converted it to mono in Cubase, and with that, I insert a compressor on it. I noticed that only left speaker is processed. What causes that? So let's say we have our stereo file here, and if you did a project, and then we convert tracks to multi-channel. So we do this, and then once that's done, we look at the panning. We can see that this is just panned. This channel is panned hard left. This channel is panned hard right, and that's what kind of creates our stereo file so that it sounds the same. So maybe just select the track and adjust the panning accordingly, and then if you put it in the center, then you'll hear it won't be limited to just being heard in the left channel. All right, so we see from George Sam, just says, thanks for help. When will Cubase 13 come? So we usually don't announce release dates beforehand. So as soon as it's out, then we will, that's when we start talking about it. It's just kind of annoying to customers to kind of tease something that they can't have. So as soon as it's out, then we will, then we can talk about it, but can't really share any info on it now. Okay. So we see Gerald Ely did the same thing that I did with dragging, and yeah, so an email video. So yeah, if you send a video to Club Cubase at steinberg.de. Okay, so we see Cubase user has a question. When you add plugins and that track gets delayed in time, how to fix those tracks in Cubase? So, as soon as plugins are added to an existing track, the track will play back to compensate for that. When it comes to, if you're doing a live recording and you have plugins on a track such as, let's say, like, a multi-band compressor, and you're not running it in live mode. So if we do this, and we load up a multi-band, this plugin can have a lot of latency. And if we go to the full mix console F3, you could actually just come over, and within the little project setup, you could have something called channel latency. So that we could see that if I recorded on this particular track, that this plugin has 123 milliseconds of latency. So it's, roughly, so 123 milliseconds of latency. So if you have plugins on your existing track and you're recording audio, they will impose latency. It's just physics. So some of the processing takes time to do live. One way to overcome this is, one, you could turn off the plugins that are causing latency on live performance. Or if you don't want to do that in a large project, if you go to the lower left-hand corner of the transport bar, you'll see this function that's called constrained delay compensation. So when you enable constrained delay compensation, what that's going to do is bypass the plugins that have a lot of latency on the system so that you could record with minimal latency. But if for existing tracks, the tracks will be compensated for, but they can't compensate, like the plugins can't play before the event is occurring. So at that point, those plugins may be causing delay, and you just have to, not use those plugins during tracking, or just activate constrained delay compensation for the plugin during tracking, and then as soon as you're done tracking, just re-enable the plugins. All right. All right, so we see from a clarification from Gnome Lit. It says, I often do gang background vocals using my voice only. I change my voice on each performance, set a random panning parameter, and then send all of the channels into a gang vocal bus. Yes, I don't know a way of kind of, manually just randomizing the plugin, the parameter for panning. I mean, so I think you have to just kind of manually set that, but I think it's easy enough to do. Okay. Okay, so we see from Cubase user, just says, I thought Greg was going to show how to delay to hold track in milliseconds and stuff, where the panning. So, if you come over here to the track panning, you could set various, you could quickly kind of set up panning here. You could just use the scroll wheel on your mouse if you wanted to be random, but there's no function that I know of that will easily kind of take that and set a random value for the pan control for doing like kind of gang backup vocals. So, but one trick that you can do that's very effective for gang backup vocals is sing into the mic, move one step over to the right, then go back to where you were, move one step over to the left, go back, go 2 steps over to the right, step back, so just change your mic position. And that's a great trick for doing gang background vocals as well. Okay. All right, so we see Ash Rebel Hen Studios just says his friend uses the constrained delay compensation on his computer as he had a potato as a CPU. Works like a treat. All right, we see Nick from Essex has made it. Glad he could join us today. I think he might be at the very end of questions. We'll see if there's more questions that come in. All right, so see, we're at the end of questions. I think we may have one more question that that was sent in advance. Let's take a look. I know we got through some of them already. Okay, so we did that. Yes, I think we got through 3 questions that were sent in advance in the live stream. So let me just jump back. We'll see if there's more. Questions that come in. So we see Ash Rebel Hen Studios says Cubase 13 wish list, bring back Wonderverb, one of the sweetest reverbs from Cubase 3.0 days. Yeah, I think that was actually developed, if memory serves right, on Wonderverb. It was actually developed by one of the, just as like a little side project. He used to be like the guys who started Reason Studios or Propeller Heads, that, you know, like the founder of Propeller Heads, Ernst, used to write the manuals for Steinberg, like when I started at Steinberg years ago. And so as one of the main developers at Propeller Heads, he came up with Wonderverb. So I think if you listen to it now, it may not fare as strong, but at the time it was just a great little, very efficient reverb. All right, so we have Mark Rabin just checking in from Albuquerque. We hope you got your flat tire from Tuesday fixed, that you're having fun in New Mexico. You haven't spent a lot of time there. All right, we'll see if there's any more questions that sneak in. Let's see, Mark Rabin is at Guitar Center currently. All right, so we have Jeff Zabelski checking in from Chico. Thanks for joining us. Let's see if you have any questions that come in. See, Jazz Dude just says some Waldorf people, if I remember correctly, also added stuff in the past. So I think the A1 synthesizer we did in conjunction with Waldorf, which is kind of a precursor of monologue, which then turned into precursor of retrolog. All right, so we see Stella's having fun and loving life in New Mexico. All right, see kind words from Ash Rebel Hen Studios, saying I'm a gentleman and a scholar. So, all right, you see Jeff Zabelski's like number 89. Let's see if there's any more questions that come in. Everyone's getting so smart with their Cubase. Must mean we need a new version to come out so that everyone has a lot of questions. All right, we see Sable saying hi to Mark Rabin. Right, give it another 30 seconds, see if there's any more questions. And I hope that everyone has learned a new tip or trick. And if you have questions that you want to send into advance, all right. All right, so you see from Michael Pierce, it says, thanks, Greg. Awesome as ever. Don't know if you answered my question this evening. I'll check back later for the listing. So I couldn't recreate the scenario that you had, so I don't know, Michael, if you had like the particular audio files, if you were able to export like those two audio files and share, like, or those two tracks and share them with me. But I tried to recreate kind of the crossfades and wasn't able to, but I just want to make sure that I have it set up the same way as you do. So maybe if you have the option to share just like two files, and I understand if it's copywritten material, I won't share it, but if you could recreate it in some way, that'd be great. All right, so we see reading through comments. All right, you see Gerald Ely's figured out the Groove Agent drop, says I missed with my first drop, and HSSE track was created after that. I couldn't drop on the Groove Agent track. It was a new project. It works just fine. How do you get rid of the HSSE track? So if you if we create a Groove Agent scenario here, so let me just open it. And we drag it, and we accidentally create an SSE, Halion Sonic SE. So what you could do is go to the VSTI, and you may see it in the rack here. So I'll just, so if you see it like here and you're like, oh, you know, you don't see the option to remove it, go to the instrument rack here and just choose no VST instrument, and then it will unload it and get rid of the track that's on there as well and unload it from the instrument rack. All right, so you see Jeff Sabelski says that he remembers now he was practicing Dorco in CC121. So I was playing with that a little bit, and something that you could try, and this may also just, and it was how to use the CC121 in Dorco for transport. So we'll open up Dorco here. All right, so let's go to our preferences and where we see kind of key commands. So let's say we want to go to like MIDI learn. So at this point we could actually just kind of choose. So let's say we go to play and I want to, so we'll say start or stop playback. So let's say, okay, I want to set up stop playback, and you see like this little MIDI. If you click here and now hit the CC121, that you could assign that MIDI command to do that particular function. So play around with that, and you know, when you, it may not say the CC121, but if you just kind of hit the particular note, at that point it will assign, you know, like that was just hitting the transport button on my CC121. So as soon as I click here, you can put in different notes and use that. Sorry. So play around with that some, Jeff. All right, so we see JVI on. Great, glad you can make it. Says, evening, Greg. Apologies, I'm late. So don't have to worry about being late. You just have to hit the like button if you're late. All right, but if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. See, Mark Rabin needed a ukulele string. Mandatory stop. All right. All right, so we see ascending planes. Just listen to a very interesting music podcast interviewing Ernst, talking about propeller heads. Very nice, interesting guy. Yeah, I like Ernst. I remember just very fond memories of doing trade shows with him when he was involved with Steinberg way back when. So, and it was an interesting story with Ernst. His very first program he did, I think he released it in 1994. It was like a little hypercard player called MIDI Explained that kind of taught you about MIDI. And it came on a floppy disk. It was that small. And when Ernst was retiring, I saw he was retiring on Facebook. And I said, I sent him a picture. I was like, oh, do you have a copy of this by any chance? And it was a floppy disk of MIDI Explained. He's like, I don't. So I was, I said, give me your address, and I mailed it to him in Sweden so he could have a copy of the first program that he created. So he was really grateful for that, but wonderful person. Really love Ernst. All right, so you see Michael Pierce says, I could probably send you the project. I'll dig through the archive for that song. It's probably odd. So yeah, I think it might be kind of systemic to the project, but I'd be happy to take a look at it. But I tried to kind of recreate it and couldn't do it. But if you have it kind of set up, I'd be happy to kind of dig into it further, Michael Pierce. And we hope you're feeling better and more normal. All right, so we see Gerald Ely just saying thanks, Greg. We'll see if JVI has any questions since he just got on late. If not, we can wrap up just a little bit early. have everyone start their weekend just a little bit earlier. And again, the index may be late tonight or early tomorrow, just because my brother is in town and I'm gonna go get dinner with him. So just a quick heads up, I'll try to put a note in the comments field as well. So just the index may be a little later than usual. All right, we're glad that Michael Pierce is feeling better from his COVID, so that's good. We hope you don't get it again. So, all right, we'll wait just another 30 seconds or so. Let's see if there's any more questions. All right, so it looks like we are out of questions for today. I want to thank everyone for spending part of your evening, afternoon, morning with us learning more about Cubase products. And we will again do this on Tuesday and Friday starting at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. So we'll see everyone back next Tuesday. And look forward to seeing everyone back on Tuesday and helping out. And again, if you need questions answered in advance, if it's more detailed, you could send it to clubcubase@steinberg.de. We wish that everyone has a wonderful weekend and everyone stays safe and healthy. Thank you very much. Goodbye.